United have been deadline day FC, haven't we? It seems like there's some sort of plan in this transfer window. I'm impressed with some of the players we've brought in, but I still feel like United are still a little bit short. We need a midfielder, at least. If things go wrong for Erik Ten Hag, I think the next in line will be Ruud van Nistelrooy. I think people will be looking at it and going, he's the successor.
Hi, I'm Angelina Kelly and welcome to Inside Devils Extra. This week, we've got a very special guest. We have got Stretford Paddock's Jay Motty. Jay, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I've done that thing that I always do at the beginning of the season where I got a bit carried away and started thinking, oh, this is it. It's going to be, 21 is coming and all the rest of it. And I just need to temper my expectations a little bit. I know we'll get into all that, but yeah, I just can't help myself. As soon as United sign a few players, I start thinking, well, just maybe this could be back on. But yeah, we'll see.
How have you felt about the transfer window in general? Because Man United have got a lot of new faces in Jason Wilcox, Dan Ashworth, Omar Barada, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, of course. Does this feel like a different transfer window for Man United compared to some of the previous ones?
Yeah, definitely. It seems like there's some sort of plan in this transfer window. In the past, United have been deadline day FC, haven't we? Deadline day, you can always bank on United, not just buying one player, but sometimes, remember that deadline day where it was like four, where it was like Facundo Palestra, Amad Diallo, Alex Telles, and Edinson Cavani, I think it was, all on the same day. Or the one where it was Odi and Igalo at like 10:30 at night. There's always something going on late on in the transfer window. And that might be the case this one, but it always sort of indicates that United haven't properly planned. This window feels a little bit different. It feels like United do have a plan. We do have targets. And if we don't get those targets, we've got backup targets. And I was over in the US for the US tour covering it for Paddock. And we saw the likes of Wilcox and Ashworth and even Omar Barada around the training sessions, around the mix zone. And there seems to be a cohesion, a unity there between the coaching staff and the hierarchy, if you will, that's been lacking in the past. And plus, you've got these people in place who do know football, who do have contacts, who do understand what it takes to make a successful team. So it does feel a little bit different. I'm impressed with some of the players we've brought in. I keep going back to that idea that it makes a lot of sense. But I still feel like United are still a little bit short. We need a midfielder, at least, before I think we'll be there. But so far, the window's been so good. I mean, we had a nice little boost on, I think it was a Saturday morning, the day of the Community Shield, where basically broke that United were about to sign Zirkzee, Mazraoui and Matthis De Ligt. So it was like a double deal that we weren't expecting to be done that quickly anyway, or that day. So that was a bonus. We've already got Joshua Zirkzee, obviously, and Lenny Yoro, despite being injured. So yeah, it's been a positive window.
And of course, you mentioned De Ligt and I'm going to make sure I say his name right. Mazraoui?
Don't follow me, whatever you do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Shocking, you know that. I'm terrible. I apologise if I've just butchered his name there. I probably have.
They've joined reportedly for around £60 million combined. Both worked under Ten Hag at Ajax. Matthis De Ligt, 25 years of age, at one point was arguably one of the most in-demand defenders in Europe. Man United have been linked with him before. He became the first defender to win the Golden Boy Award. He's a leader, became Ajax's youngest ever captain at 18. Two big moves already to Juventus and Bayern Munich, both for around 67 and 65 million. Each time the transfer fee is dropping, it hasn't 100% worked for him at Juventus or Bayern. He's had moments of greatness, but it's not really slotted as people expected. Are you concerned about that?
I mean, I think you're always a little bit wary when a player's perhaps not had the best of moves, if you will, where there is a little bit of a question there. How successful was he at Juve? How successful was he at Bayern Munich? Yes, he won the title in both those clubs. I mean, it's almost a given in it at Bayern Munich. If you spend a couple of years there, you should be winning a title. But he did play his part in title wins. However, I still feel like there's a good player there. You can see the reaction of some of the Bayern Munich fans who are fuming that he's leaving. Also, Bayern Munich's a bit of a funny one because certain players, they fall out of favour, or there seems to be a little bit of politics sometimes that goes on there. It's like, managers prefer players, the club prefer players, fans prefer players, whatever. And I do think that Matthis De Ligt, when he's fit, has been fully fit, has done well at Bayern Munich. He's obviously a fantastic player. I like the fact that he's coming into a side that already has options in defence. I know we've not got loads of options because Lenny Yoro's got injured, but we did bring in Lenny Yoro. We have got Lisandro Martinez. You have got Harry Maguire. I know a lot of people don't rate, but I still think there's a you know, you can get a tune out of Harry Maguire. I feel like there's options there, so it's not like it's all on De Ligt, although I think if he's fit, he'll probably start. So it does feel a little bit differently to me. He's still only 25, I think just turned 25. As you said, young captain, loads of experience. It's very rare to get a 25-year-old who's been at 3 of the biggest clubs in the world, and he has. And I don't think he's been a disaster at any of those clubs. I know that's not the benchmark. Has he been a disaster? But he's done quite well to a degree at all of them. Probably not quite hit the heights that perhaps was expected. But I think if you go back to 2019 or whatever it was, I mean, unless he was winning a Ballon d'Or every year, he would never hit the expectation that he was put on him. Everyone was like, this guy's going to be the greatest player ever because he was like such a young leader. And he's perhaps not quite lived up to that, but he's done well. And I think he'll do well at Manchester United under a manager who obviously knows him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'll get on to Ten Hag and his love of players that he's worked with before. Going over to the right back, about £17 million for him. When you look at Man United's fullbacks, I feel like it's been a bit of a struggle for a while. You look at that left side, you've got Luke Shaw, Tyrell Malacia, both love an injury. You've then got on the right Diogo Dalot, Aaron Wan-Bissaka's now left, which we'll discuss. Are you happy to have a new right back at the club?
If it had been up to me, I wouldn't have bothered. I'll be honest with you. I'm a big Aaron Wan-Bissaka fan, and I like Diogo Dalot as well. And I think we had a good combination there. I think you had 2 right backs who almost complemented each other. If you needed a right back who could stick to a left winger and man-mark him and mark him out of the game, there's fewer finer than Aaron Wan-Bissaka at doing that. We saw it in the Carabao Cup final. There's a great example a couple of years ago where Dalot gets a booking in the first half. He's having a torrid time against Alan Saint-Maximin. Aaron Wan-Bissaka comes on at half time, puts him in his pocket. United win the Carabao Cup. You go back to the FA Cup final, the recent one against Manchester City. Jeremy Doku causing problems. Aaron Wan-Bissaka's on it. Again, puts him in his pocket. I know Doku scored, but that wasn't Wan-Bissaka's fault. He did a very, very good man-marking job. And he is that type of player who can handle any left winger. And I don't think he's as bad as some say going forward. He's not as good as a Dalot, but he's not the disaster that's been perhaps made out by some people. And Dalot is just a very, very good modern fullback, can get forward, can defend, and has got a very good record for Manchester United, was one of our better players last season. So I thought we were sorted. However, if the manager doesn't fancy him, he doesn't fancy him. If the manager's got other ideas, he's got other ideas. Or perhaps the player didn't want to commit long term, I'm not sure. So with a year left on his deal, if you're not 100% on him, it makes sense to try and get some money for Aaron Wan-Bissaka and get someone in that you do want or does want to be at United long term, which is where Mr. Mazraoui has come in. So I get it. I get the idea behind it. It wouldn't have been my choice, but I'm not the manager of Manchester United. Erik Ten Hag obviously knows what he's doing or has a plan of what he wants to do. In terms of left back, though, I'm massively concerned. And this is what surprised me about United. I think if we were going to buy a fullback, it should have been a left back. Now, I know you can play Dalot there. I think you can even play Mazraoui there if you need to. We saw Lisandro Martinez playing there, I think, at the weekend. He was shifted out at the Community Shield, so that, you know, we've moved him about before. But I don't think you can rely on Luke Shaw. He's injured again. Tyrell Malacia's just had, a year out, and he's still not fit. And you've got Harry Amas coming in, who's a very good player, did well at pre-season, but he's 17. Can you rely on him week in, week out at your left-back spot for Manchester United? Maybe one day, but not quite yet. So, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised at the fact United focused on right-back. But, you know, you have to sort of, I know it's a cliche, but trust the process, trust you know what they're doing. Because if it was up to me, Aaron Wan-Bissaka would have been going nowhere.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean there. You would have expected that kind of left side to have been looked at because, like you say, Luke Shaw, as great as Luke Shaw is when he's fit, you can't rely on him. Like you say, Malacia, I barely even remember seeing him play. He's been injured for that long. But looking at that centre-back pairing, you would expect to see Lisandro Martinez, again, if fit, in the left kind of centre-back role. Do you think that De Ligt's going to be fighting it out with Harry Maguire on the right? Which would be your centre-back pairing? Do you think it will be Martinez and De Ligt? And when you look at those two names, do you think if this goes to plan, this could be a very strong centre-back pairing in the Premier League?
Yeah, it could. The interesting one for me is perhaps Maguire and De Ligt. I think De Ligt starts off with Maguire if he's fit. I don't know if he'll be fit for the Fulham game, but I certainly expect him to be fit. After that, we've got some big games coming up after that, so I expect him to feature. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Lenny Orrell returns, because obviously he's out for a few months. So I'll answer your question, yeah, I think Martinez and De Ligt, I think that can work, and I think that there might be some questions, and I've questioned myself, said, is there enough pace there? Do they complement each other enough? And I think they do. I think they read the game very well, both of them, and I think they can absolutely smash it. But when Lenny Orrell's fit, is he not going to want to come into this side? Let's not forget, this is a kid who, from what we gathered, turned down the chance to go to Real Madrid. I don't think he did that to sit on the bench for Manchester United. I know he's only 18, but he's going to want to play football. And centre-back pairings are a funny one because, yes, you can rotate and you can get lots of chances, but there has to be a first choice somewhere along the line where you go, look, if this is the biggest game of the season or whatever, this is our first choice centre-back pairing. So I'm not quite sure whether that will be De Ligt and Martinez or Euro and Martinez. I think Martinez will always start. I think it'll be him and another one of those two. I think if push came to shove, right now it's probably going to be Matthis De Ligt, not just because Euro's injured, but even when Euro's fit. But I do expect him to feature. I do expect Euro to get a lot of games. And you see it at Manchester City. I know I hate to use them as an example, but they do win a lot of titles. They've got a lot of centre-backs that you look at and you go, okay, Nathan Ake can play at centre-back, John Stones, Diaz, Akanji. They have this sort of, they have three or four centre-backs who all get a lot of games. And maybe that's something United can look at. This new sort of modern way of having centre-backs at fullback. I know that's not, we mentioned there the right-back and expect the logo to be the right-back, but we've seen it in some clubs where, I think Arsenal do it another way. You've got the likes of Ben White, who's a centre-back playing at right-back, and, other clubs have done it where you look at across their back four, it just feels like they've got four centre-backs. So it'll be interesting to see how Erik Ten Hag manages this one, but it's a nice problem to have because it feels for once like we've got a few options.
Yeah, when you look at that back four, it's been such a talking point for Man United. So I think, like you say, to have those options and to have strong options. I mean, Lenny Yoro, £52 million from Lille reportedly. Only 18, like you say. Yes, he's got the injury, the Man United injury curse. But like you say, this whole Real Madrid link that he was a big, big target for them. There's this big conversation about Manchester United still being, of course, one of the biggest clubs in the world, in that kind of top tier with a team like Real Madrid and Manchester United, maybe a Barcelona as well, etc. A lot of talk of, have United lost their sparkle? But do you think that this shows that Man United is still a club that people want to go to if they've beaten Real Madrid to his signature?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes we can be a bit down on United. It's easy to just dismiss us because we haven't won a title since 2013, and obviously we're not in the Champions League this season, and pick, United, they're a fallen giant, the this, that, and the rest of it. But look at the size of the club, look at the stature of the club, look at the amount of fans the club have got, look at the amount of fans you get through the gate every week. We've still got the biggest fan base in England. We've still got the biggest crowds in England. We're still the most successful Premier League club ever in England. There's a lot of reasons to sign for Manchester United. And when you talk about, say, the top sort of 4 or 5 clubs in the world, you put United up there. You're probably looking at going Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Manchester United and Juve. If you're going to go your top sort of 5, probably. You might have a few arguments about one or two others, but that seems to be it. And I think that it's too easy to go, why would anyone want to go to Manchester United? If you're a player and you're looking at going to England or you're looking at going to another club, Manchester United come calling, no matter what you're going to think about it. Now, you might think about it and go, no, I want Champions League football. No, I want a guaranteed title and I ain't getting it at United. Or you might look at it and go, look, this is one of the biggest clubs in the world. The money's good. Let's not ignore that as well. Man United always pay competitive wages. I know we're not paying as much as we used to. The Ineos have changed that a little bit, but you're still going to get a good wage. You're still going to come into a club with a rich history. You're still going to play in front of 76,000 fans every week. And you're still going to be part of one of the biggest clubs in the world. So, yeah, I think that is a little bit of a reminder to some people that don't dismiss United completely, because yes, if you go to a club like Manchester City, for example, almost guaranteed a trophy, aren't you? I mean, the way things are at the minute, you pretty much guaranteed a title. Go to Real Madrid, you guaranteed a Champions League. That's how it feels. If you spend 4 years at Real Madrid, you're going to win a Champions League. But if you come to Manchester United, whilst you're might not be guaranteed silverware, certainly not those trophies I've mentioned, you are guaranteed to be part of one of the biggest clubs in the world, and that's going to be attractive.
And you talked, earlier about how it feels like there's a plan in place with Man United and this transfer window. Are you happy to see that Man United have signed more of a generational talent versus dropping loads of money on a player? You look at big names like, Rafael Varane, 28 years of age, 41 million. Of course, Casemiro with that £70 million price tag. To see somebody like him at 18 years of age, these are the kind of transfers that Man United fans have been wanting.
100%. I mean, like you mentioned there, the players that we've signed a a lot of players who are at their peak or coming towards their peak, and sometimes we seem to have signed them and not had a plan with them. Look at Angel Di Maria, didn't want to be here. Jaden Sancho, we signed him. Apparently, he wanted to play on the left, but Marcus Rashford was already playing there. We found out when he got here, and then it was like, well, we're going to have to play you on the right. You look at Paul Pogba, big money signing. I liked Paul Pogba. Did we have a plan for him? Did we know what we were going to do? It felt like we were always debating what was Paul Pogba's best position. How does he fit into this Manchester United side? Harry Maguire, another one. I like Harry Maguire. I think he's a good defender. Is he worth 80 million quid? Absolutely not. No chance. And it's not his fault we paid that. Don't get me started on Anthony. So we've gone out and we've spent a lot of money on players, even big name players that you think are bankers, the likes of Casemiro, Di Maria and Pogba, where it seems like there's been a bit of short-termism there, where it's like we haven't really got a plan how we want to use them. We've not looked at the long-term, what this is going to mean for Manchester United, and we've perhaps overpaid for them, and certainly overpaid a lot of the time in wages as well. So this does feel a little bit more grown-up, this thinking of, look, here's a player who's potentially, I know he's injured at a minute, potentially could play for Manchester United for many years to come. And even if he doesn't, even if in a few years, Lenny Yoro was to say, you know what, I do fancy going to the Bernabeu, I am going to go to Madrid if they still have me, you'll get your money back and probably a profit, which just from a business point of view makes a lot more sense than buying Casemiro, for example, where if United do manage to shift him on, it's going to be for a loss.
Another player that United have signed, Joshua Zirkzee. I'm with you. This was a signing that I allowed myself to get quite excited, and I don't know if that's okay or not, but I'm still excited and I'm going to allow it. 23 years of age, 6'4", around £38 million, already got a good amount of experience by Munich, Anderlecht, Bologna, impressive at the Euros. Last season, he was ranked amongst the top 10 players in Serie A for goals from open play, chances created from open play, successful dribbles, all-round threat. I mean, if someone's compared to Zlatan Ibrahimovic, I will take that. Someone who can press high, hold the ball up, score goals. This is why I'm so excited about this guy. When you look at Man United and strikers, it feels like it's just been a proper roller coaster. Since signing, you go back to Robin van Persie, you could argue that Man United have struggled at times. I mean, you've got some of the names, Alexis Sanchez, Memphis Depay, Radamel Falcao, Wout Weghorst, Odion Ighalo. I will always have love for Odion Ighalo just because you could tell how much he loved the club and how happy he was to be there. Romelu Lukaku obviously was so inconsistent at times. Anthony Martial, obviously shout out to the likes of Edinson Cavani. The return of Ronaldo, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, big names, but not the right fit, whether it was due to age or injury or whatever. Do you feel like with Rasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee, United have finally got two strikers that could be the right fit?
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like that, because despite the fact that Zirkzee is not the big name of a Ronaldo or a Cavani or a Lukaku even, he's not, in some of those cases, they were past the best. He does seem to offer something different to Rasmus Højlund. He's very exciting to watch, Joshua Zirkzee, although I will pull you up on one thing you said there. I agreed with everything. I don't know about impressive in the Euros. I think he played about a minute. I don't know what you saw that I didn't see, because you must have been impressed with that cameo. He must have.
I was impressed, thank you.
Amazing warming up there. You were like, that's the kid for us. Look at the way he's stretching there. He's fantastic. But I get your point of like all the other things. This is an exciting player. He's gone to Bologna. I think he was their top scorer. And you mentioned the fact that they had a very good season getting into the Champions League, which no one expected him to do. So there's a player there you can look at and go, yeah, 6'4", great on the ball, a little bit different, can sort of come deep, can carry the ball well. He could fit in really well at Manchester United. Where in the past it just feels like we've gone for the name. Who's the biggest name? Cavani's a big name. He scored loads of goals in the past. Get him in. Ronaldo, massive name. I don't feel like the manager wanted him particularly, but he went and got him because he was available. He looked like Manchester City were going to get him. Lukaku, who looked like a banker, didn't he? Scored a load of goals at Everton. Just didn't quite fit. Didn't quite work for him at Manchester United, especially in the bigger games. This one feels like there's a little bit more, going back to my earlier point, like a plan. Like, this is a player who can fit into this team, offers you something a little bit different from Rasmus Højlund. He's not the same player at all, but he's young enough as well that he could maybe kick on a level. And is coming off the back of a good season as well. This isn't a player in decline. He's coming off the back of a good season. So, like you, I'm very excited to see Joshua Zirkzee. I think he'll be a good signing for Manchester United. I've not seen loads of him, but for what I'm seeing, he's very impressive. He looks like the sort of player who can excite fans as well. The way he plays a game, some of the goals he scores, and the way he carries the ball as well. So yeah, it does feel a little bit different. And I know as United fans, we've been here before, but this is different. This isn't what Manchester United usually do. Usually United don't go out and buy a big name, quite an expensive 18-year-old defender. We don't go out and buy a striker who's up and coming. We have done in the past, but it's not usually what we do. It does feel a little bit different. It feels like under Ineos, I know we keep going back to the Dutch leagues, even with the players I mentioned, but it does feel like there's a little bit more sort of grown-up thinking and a little bit more like football people in football positions who can help the manager.
And when you look at Højlund and Zirkzee, two different players, but are you a fan of them potentially competing for a position? Do you like to see that with players? Do you think that, a lot of, former players say that sometimes having that competition and someone almost breathing down your neck is a good thing, or is that something that you worry about?
No, you always need competition for places. I think it's a very good thing. And I think you look at Manchester United historically, it's been what we've always had. We've always had those players who you look at and you go, okay, is he the first team striker or is he not? Our best ever season, the treble winning season, you had 4 strikers for 2 spots, and you had Cole and York. Yeah, Sheringham and Solskjaer played their part. And I'm going back 25 years, but I'm just talking about historically, that's always been a positive thing. And you're going back and make it more recent. Look at what happened last season with Rasmus Højlund. The kid went, what was it? I can't remember. Was it 14, 15 games in the Premier League, whatever it was, without a goal? A pretty long run. Could have maybe done with the rest. Could have maybe done with being taken out of that firing line at one point. Maybe after 5 or 6 games, you go, we'll tell you what, sit this one out, we'll play someone else. But because United had that lack of options, it didn't feel like we could do that. It felt like we sort of had to just keep playing him until he played his way out of this barren spell, which, to be fair, the lad, he did. But if you've got a Joshua Zirkzee, then you can rotate. Even if it's not necessarily a competition thing, it's just a form thing or a fitness thing where you might go, okay, we've got someone else in. Plus, if you've got players who are pushing each other, and if you don't play well, if you're not giving it your all, you've got someone who's going to come in and take your spot. That can help. That really can. And it feels like with Manchester United now, we're getting there in the attack, not just with Zirkzee and Højlund down the middle. But if you look at it on the left-hand side, you could argue there's a debate to be had whether it's going to be Alejandro Garnacho or Marcus Rashford. You could argue that it'd be okay, maybe you're going to play Garnacho on the right. Well, then you've got Amad Diallo there as well. I know it's not amazing because I still feel there's massive flaws in the likes of Anthony and Jaden Sancho. But you've at least got a couple of options there, permutations it can use. We know Mason Mount, for example, can even play out wide. So with Zirkzee coming in, it adds to that. It adds to that sense of, there's probably 4 or 5 players vying for 3 places, if not a little bit more. And that's the way it should be at a big club. Certainly a club the size of Manchester United. You shouldn't have one option as your striker, one is your right winger, and one is your left winger. And if one of them is not fit or out of form, then you have to move someone out of position. It shouldn't be like that. So I think it could work. And you never know. Maybe one day we might even see them both playing together and see a 4-4-2. And if that happens, then I will lose my marbles because that's just the best formation ever.
I love that. And I think also, when you've got 2 players pushing each other, am I going to say that Zirkzee is going to be competing with, Erling Haaland for the Golden Boot in the Premier League? Of course, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. But I think when you've got 2 players competing with each other, that, like you say, can only help and could maybe help increase that goal tally. And I think just get a Man United striker back in those conversations for top goal scorers, I think would be great. 1 goal scorer for Man United, Ruud van Nistelrooy, incoming transfer off the pitch, unfortunately, as an assistant coach. 150 goals in 219 appearances for Man United. He will always be iconic. What are you expecting him to bring to the table, and how excited were you to hear that he was coming back to Old Trafford?
I was massively excited, and Ruud van Nistelrooy, he's probably the best striker I've ever seen. I know that might sound a bit like I'm getting carried away, but I've seen it for years. He was just phenomenal. Look at his goal scoring record. Look at the amount of goals he scored in the season. I think was it 42 or something in all competitions in one season or something like that. I can't remember. It was that many. It was just, I remember when he first came to United, he was just constantly scoring every week. It felt like he scored. And he was just a phenomenon. He really was. And when I heard he was coming back, I was chuffed. But it's not just about what he did as a striker, because that doesn't necessarily translate to you being a fantastic coach or a great manager. We've seen many strikers and many players in general who've been amazing as players, but when it comes to being a coach or a manager, aren't quite at that level. Roy Keane's probably the best midfielder, or one of the best midfielders, alongside Brian Robson I've ever seen play for Manchester United. Were those 2 great successes as managers? Probably not. I know they had some success, but not what you'd expect from legends of that caliber. The difference with Ruud van Nistelrooy is he isn't just coming in as a coach, as a player who with all that experience, that club legend status. He's coming in as someone who's done very well as a manager as well. He's done well as a coach. He's done well as a manager at PSV. So he brings that knowledge, that pedigree with him. This isn't just about what he did when he was kicking a ball about at Old Trafford. It's what he's done as a coach as well. And I think it can help. I think it helps with that sort of, that level of sort of experience you've got as a player who knows how to put the ball in the back of the net, and as a coach knowing how to get players to do what you want to do. And I remember years ago, you used to see there was sort of footage from United of Ruud van Nistelrooy coaching some of the kids. You used to see him talking to likes of Danny Welbeck and Jesse Lingard and showing those things. There were those things as well. And I used to love watching those little videos. I think they did the rounds a little bit on social media long ago. Obviously, he's gone on and become a proper coach and has done well there. So, yeah, I think it is exciting. I think it makes a lot of sense. There is that Dutch connection as well for Erik Ten Hag that is sort of another part of his backroom staff who we can work alongside, and who, there will be a sort of relationship there. I just feel that with Erik Ten Hag and Ruud van Nistelrooy now, there is going to be this question mark, and I said this. I think I said it last time on talkSPORT. I said, where if things go wrong for Erik Ten Hag, I think the next in line will be Ruud van Nistelrooy. I think people will be looking at it and going, he's the successor, because if and I don't think it will, but if it does go wrong for Erik Ten Hag and he loses a lot of matches early doors, whatever, and people go, he's not that guy, then I think that the board or whoever, the hierarchy, whether it's Dan Ashworth or Dave Brailsford or Jim Ratcliffe, whoever makes those decisions, might look and go, well, Ruud van Nistelrooy's here, he's a coach, he's a legend, he's your man.
And I think, like you say, no one wants to think of, Erik Ten Hag leaving. He's staying at the club. You would like to think that things are going to go well, but I think a change like that, you can only imagine what the fans would be like. It would be huge. Talking about this, Erik Ten Hag, Ajax, Eredivisie players in general, I'll read a few to you. You've got Tyrell Malacia, who was at Feyenoord. Christian Eriksen was at Ajax, but before Erik Ten Hag. Lisandro Martinez, Anthony, Andre Onana, Wout Weghorst played in the Netherlands. Sofian Amrabat played for Feyenoord when Erik Ten Hag was at Ajax in his first season. Mason Mount went on loan to a Dutch side. You've got Joshua Zirkzee, who's from the Netherlands. The two new signings with that Ajax connection. 5 current players that you would expect to be in Man United's starting lineup have played under Erik Ten Hag at Ajax. We've seen a mixture of some successes and some disappointments with the players he's already brought in. I'm talking about an Anthony, Lisandro Martinez, etc. Do you think that people are reading too much into this volume of players from Ajax or that league? Is it concerning to you, or do you think it is just people are just reading into it too much?
No, I think that people are right to look at it, because like you just listed there, it's quite excessive. There's a lot of players there that have come from the Dutch league or come from working with Erik Ten Hag or whatever, or playing under Erik Ten Hag. And it made me laugh when I saw Mason Mount was linked. And I thought, well, there's something different. We're not just going down the Dutch league. And he's like, well, he's at Vitesse and Erik Ten Hag saw him and he scored a goal, a free kick. So that's why he's always been a big fan. And you think, crikey, it's just constant, isn't it? It's like every player we have has to have some sort of Dutch connection, whether they went to Amsterdam on their holidays or whatever. It just feels like there's something there. I don't mind it as long as they're good players. No one's moaning about Lisandro Martinez playing for Manchester United because he's a fantastic footballer, and the fact that he came from Ajax is not a detriment. And also, let's not forget, it's not like a lot of these players are coming from a club that's poor or a league that's poor. The Dutch league is a decent league. Ajax are a big club. A lot of them have come from Ajax. And some of these players are, they're being linked with United, not just because of what they did in Holland, but what they've done post that. We're talking about Joshua Zirkzee, what he did at Bologna. Christian Eriksen, what he did at Tottenham, was one of the reasons why, and Brentford, one of the reasons why you looked at him. So it's not just about the fact they are from the Dutch league or played at Ajax or played under Erik Ten Hag, but you can't ignore that. It does seem a little bit excessive, but listen, if the players are good enough, then I'm all about it. I think the one that always damages Erik Ten Hag, and I mentioned him earlier, and I don't want to keep going on about him, but it is Andy, because that signing is looking like such a bad signing for such a large amount of money that people are going, you can't keep going back to Dutch league because this is what you can end up with. Because he was part of a successful Ajax team that absolutely, I wouldn't say they walked the league because they were pushed quite close, but they won a lot of matches. And he was part of that. Yet he comes to United and he struggles. So you've got to be wary of that. And this is where I think Ineos come in, and Ineos can go, the likes of Jason Wilcox, Dan Ashworth, they're not going to be just scouting from the Dutch league. They're not just going to be looking at likes of Ajax and Feyenoord and whoever. They're going to have a broader scope to look at different players. So they might be able to help out Erik Ten Hag a little bit. They might be able to rein him in a little bit. But as we've seen Matthis De Ligt, is it a bad thing? Should it put you off certain players? Would you say, well, we're not going to get De Ligt because he played at Ajax? because he played with Erik Ten Hag. Of course you wouldn't. You wouldn't say that. That'd be insane. Because if he's a good player, he's good enough. As Matt Busby used to say, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And I think if you're good enough, you're Dutch enough, if that makes any sense. It doesn't matter if you're Dutch. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Going now quickly to the outgoings. We'll do a bit of a quick fire here, but if you believe that these were the right decisions, Raphael Varane left as a free agent to Serie A side. Como, right decision?
Yeah, 100%. I think he's got injured, hasn't he? Which is sad to see, but it shows the issues that he's had post sort of Real Madrid. Really, it's sad to see, but yeah, I like Varane. We saw what he was about in the FA Cup final. He came back for that one game, and I'm glad he did. We needed him, but it just didn't work out. And it was weird because he played very well when he played for Manchester United. He was never a bad player for Manchester United. He was just injured too often. So yeah, it was the right move to let him go, and I'm sorry it seems to be off on the bad start, because I think he's still well respected by a lot of United fans, certainly by me.
100%, I agree. Anthony Martial left as a free agent, most expensive teenager in the world, as rival fans like to remind everyone, when he was bought in 2015, 90 goals, 317 appearances. He splits fan opinion massively, but the right call. It was time to go.
It's probably time to go 2 years ago, wasn't it? To be honest with you, it was probably time to go when Erik Ten Hag came in. But I think he did a little bit in pre-season, and then he did bits in cameos where he scored a few goals during Erik Ten Hag's first season. But he should have gone a little while ago. And listen, I think we'll always have a little bit of fondness for Tony M because of some of the goals he scored. You look at the Everton FA Cup semi-final, his debut, one or two others as well. But on the whole, I think he was long overdue in moving on.
Two players that have moved on that, to be honest, we don't even need to talk about. But I know that Brandon Williams and Mason Greenwood, both been alleged of some things that have been completely unacceptable. Both are now off the books. I'm sure that you'll agree with me that that's the right decision. Donny van der Beek signed with Girona for £423,000. Arrived at Old Trafford for a deal reportedly around £40 million, I think it was. It was just a disaster, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it was one of those signings where it felt like people were jumping over themselves to tell us how wonderful Donny van der Beek is without actually watching him that often. And he was a good player in a good team. But then when he came to Manchester United, he struggled. He really did. And despite the odd sort of glimpses, he just wasn't as good as people made out. And it became this thing where everyone was sort of craving and pushing for him to be a star in the first team, an easy answer to all our problems. He wasn't, and I felt a bit sorry for him that when Erik Ten Hag came in, it looked like that was going to give him a bit of a rejuvenation, and then he got injured. I think it was against Bournemouth, and he was out for the season. Went on loan. He had a loan move when he went to Everton. Again, he missed half of that for injury, and then his more recent loan move was just a bit of a disaster. So yeah, he never felt like as well that Ollie really wanted him. It felt like he got lumbered with him. Just not the player that some people thought he was.
One name that came up for me that I kind of was side-eyeing, Willy Campbell moved to Villarreal for about £9.6 million. The 19-year-old got, I think, about 10 appearances last season. United have retained a buyback option for 3 years on him and a considerate share of any sell-on price. He had 1 year left, apparently rejected the offer of a new contract. I was kind of sad to see him go, but I think this could be a situation where this new era of Man United, potentially quite a smart business deal, especially if you've got that buyback option.
Yeah, we saw the rough with the smooth with Campbell, didn't we? Was it Liverpool where he played well and then saw him struggle against Bournemouth? It makes sense if you've got a buyback option. I mean, ideally you would want to keep hold of him because he's a good young player, but if he doesn't want to sign a new deal and if you want to bring in a little bit of money, I know it's not loads, but you get something for him, then it kind of makes sense. So yeah, if he smashes it, then you can bring him back if he's up for coming back, and if not, we wish him well. But yeah, it was just a bit of an odd one with Campbell because you could see he's a good player, but I think the jury's still massively out, and I don't even know how much he'd have played this season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and of course Aaron Wan-Bissaka moved to West Ham for £15 million. You know, you've spoken about it, and I would tend to agree. I always remember those Manchester derbies where there would be times where I'd forget Raheem Sterling was even on the pitch because Wan-Bissaka just had him in his pocket. And I think I agree with you that a lot of Man United fans will be sad to see him go. I mean, maybe it was a personal decision. He wanted to, go to London. But I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think he will be missed. And I think overall, I think Man United fans have a lot of time and a lot of respect for him, because when he was good, he was a good player.
He was. And listen, I'm not going to pretend he was perfect. There was some flaws there going forward in his game. That's one of the reasons why he's probably ended up ultimately moving on. But I think when he was on it, like you say, you look at those battles with Raheem Sterling, the way even battles, he just, like you say, pocketed him and helped Manchester United win some big games against Manchester City. I mentioned the cup finals earlier where he played well. And there was some great performances by Wan-Bissaka. And he was an exciting defender to watch from a defending point of view. He wasn't one of those players who just sort of take the ball off someone. He'd go to the ground all the time, and he mastered the art of tackling. And it's almost a forgotten art now with VAR and the way things are with fouls being given left, right, and centre for everything. Yet the timing of his tackles was fantastic. And I think as Wilfred Zaha said when we played Palace at Sellers Park, he said he was through on goal in the last minute to get them the winner. And Wan-Bissaka tackled him, and he said, when I looked around and saw it was Aaron, I knew I was going to get tackled. And that's Zaha, who's a very good player and scored a lot of goals for Palace. So, yeah, I wish him well. Sad to see him go. But I kind of, like I said earlier, understand why. I just hope it doesn't come back to buy us and we don't end up regretting it.
Very, very quickly, not really a transfer, but back from that loan with Borussia Dortmund, Jaden Sancho. I want to ask, where do you sit with Sancho? 73 million for him in 2021. Are you in the camp of, let's really give this a go this season and give him a chance? Or are you more in the camp of, you know what, maybe let him play a bit, maybe try and raise a bit of his value and sell him? Does he deserve to play at all? Because, we've spoken a little bit about the wingers. You look at that Community Shield game, players like Amad Diallo, Alejandro Garnacho are proving that these players could be the future on the wings. You've then also got Antony, who has been, horrendous. You also have Marcus Rashford that fans will be rooting for. Can Sancho salvage things? What do you see happening this season? What do you want to happen?
I think it's best for all concerned if he moves on. I do. I don't think there's any love between him and the manager. I know they've sort of buried the hatchet, if you will, but I think both of them ideally would like to be elsewhere, or, well, not both of them. I think both of them would rather that Jaden Sancho was elsewhere, I should say. I think Jaden Sancho would like to move. I think he'd have loved to have gone back to Dortmund if he could have. He obviously felt a lot more at home there. I think that's what he said. Erik Ten Hag, we saw that his reaction to the way Sancho had been last season, wasn't happy with him. Also, Erik Ten Hag in his first season gave Sancho this 3 months where he went to the Netherlands to try and get fit or whatever it was. That didn't work. He's tried a lot of things with him. He's tried him down the middle. He's tried him out wide. I just don't think Jaden Sancho's cut out for playing for Manchester United, and he's certainly not playing for Manchester United under Erik Ten Hag. And I think he'd be best if he moved on. And I wouldn't be saying, oh, let's play him and put him in the shop window. I wouldn't. I'd just be saying, look, let's just play whoever deserves to play for Manchester United. And for me, that isn't Jaden Sancho at the minute. I think Amad Diallo, Alejandro Garnacho, and Marcus Rashford have done more to deserve a start for Manchester United than Jaden Sancho has in one of those wide positions. So I wonder, even Facundo Pellistri, you could argue, does more and shows more determination than Jaden Sancho. I'm not saying he's as good a player, because he isn't. So I think Jaden Sancho needs to move on. The talking got PSG. If that can happen, that'd be a happy sort of solution to the problem, because I think Jaden Sancho's career at Manchester United has never got going, and I don't think it's going to get going now.
I completely agree. Looking at this transfer window, currently close to spending £150 million at the time of you and I speaking. Overall, do you feel like Man United have bought the right players? I know you mentioned a little bit earlier, there are maybe one or two more players you would like to see.
Yeah, I think we've done well so far. I like the signings. I like the fact that some of the signings I don't know a lot about. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think when it's not the big shiny star, you go, okay, let's learn a little bit more about this player. It feels like they've done a little bit more homework, or there's a little bit of a reason for getting him other than his name or his marketing value. I still keep going back to that point about a midfielder though. Casemiro, I know he did quite well in the Charity Shield, or the Community Shield, sorry. Is he still that guy? I'm not sure. We need a midfielder. If we can get a midfielder in, I think it'll be a fantastic window for Manchester United. I think we've addressed most of the problems we've got to address, other than the left-back situation I mentioned earlier. But if we don't get a midfielder, I still feel as though we're lacking. And I don't think it's a position you can ignore. No, you can't ignore any position, but United don't have a midfielder who can basically sit in front of that defence and protect that defence. And despite bringing in the likes of De Ligt and Lenny Yoro, I still feel you need that. We saw it in the FA Cup final. It was a good example where you had McTominay and Amrabat almost doing the job of one man in that defensive role. I think McTominay sort of man-marked Rodri, and Amrabat was sort of sat in front of the defence, and they both did a very good job. We saw how Casemiro struggled last season, how United struggled in the Premier League last season. Kobbie Mainoo is a fantastic footballer. He's not a DM, he's not a six. He can play alongside someone as a deep line midfielder, but you need that DM really, or someone who can sit in front of that defence. If United don't get that, I'll be worried.
PSG's Manuel Ugarte, 23-year-old, left out of PSG's training recently. He's a name that United have been linked to. Burnley's Sander Berge, who's 26. And, of course, another Ajax player in Frenkie de Jong, Barcelona midfielder. Any of those names kind of spark your interest?
I think the Manuel Ugarte one feels like the most obvious one. Feels like it's a doable deal. I know Manchester United probably need to move someone else on to make that happen, but it feels like there could be something happening there, especially when you mentioned the fact he's not. I think, you mentioned about the way he's training with PSG as well. It feels like they're ready to get rid of him. Obviously, they brought in João Neves as well. So they basically, brought in someone who's going to play in that role for all the different types of players. But I do think that's the one that's most obvious. Sander Berge, spoke to a Burnley fan the other day, our mate Robert, and he was telling me a little bit about him, and he was saying that, look, he's a very good player, he's probably our best player. Should he be a start for Manchester United? Probably not, but he's definitely someone you could use as an option. So you can, is he quite that guy? Probably not. And then Frenkie de Jong, I'm sick of the Frenkie de Jong rumours. We tried to get him. They accepted our bid. He didn't want to come.
Let it die now.
Is it ever going to happen? It feels like this is the sort of the modern era Wesley Sneijder, isn't it? Do you remember when Wesley Sneijder was linked? Then we had Milinkovic-Savic, didn't we, for about 5 years? And this feels like the next one. This is we're in the Frenkie de Jong to United era, and I don't think it'll ever happen.
But you know what? I agree with you. I want to just let it die now. If we were going to have him, we'd have had him. I can't even think about it. I'm sick of the links and he liked someone's picture on Instagram. Could it mean that he's going to United? I'm with you on that one. We need to just let that one go. And finally, which incoming player do you think you've got the highest expectation of?
That's a good question. Probably De Ligt, to be honest with you. I think you look at his track record, he's been at 3 big clubs now. He was a sort of superstar, wasn't he? As a youngster, everyone was talking about him. Everyone was like, Matthis De Ligt, he's going to be that guy. Got the move to Juve on the back of that, and then still got a move to Bayern Munich after the Juve move, where people said, did he quite hit the heights he should have done? Now he's at Manchester United. I'm excited to see what he can offer. I'm excited by all the signings we've made, to be fair, but De Ligt in particular. I think if he can start off well alongside Lisandro Martinez, then maybe that answers the question you asked earlier about who's going to be our centre-back pairing. If you can get them two firing all cylinders together, then De Ligt could be that guy.
And if you could rate, at the moment when you and I are speaking, the signings that Man United have made, what would you rate this window out of 10?
I'd give it a 7 so far. I think we've made some good signings. I'm impressed by the fact we've brought in a few players. I still think there's a question there. What are we going to do about the left-back spot? And also the midfielder. You sign a midfielder, then, it's a very good window. But without one, we're short.
Well, Jay, thank you very much for joining us. For those who do not know, Jay Motty, you can find him on Stretford Paddock, arguably Man United's biggest YouTube channel. So yeah, Jay, thank you so much for joining us and hope to speak to you soon.
Thanks. Always a pleasure.